Hi, hello. It has been a while. I am very sorry, but today I want to talk to you guys about self-care. In this video, I really want to stress the importance of self-care while also encouraging you to step beyond your own perspective as to what you think self-care means. Now, self-care is actually a very simple concept. An act of self-care is engaging in an activity that we deliberately do in order to take care of our physical, emotional, and mental well-being. It means a lot of things. I could not possibly give you a list of everything in the world that consists of self-care because everyone has different methods, and there are so many endless different ways on how we can reduce negative emotions and uplift our personal well-being. It can mean anything from practicing yoga and taking baths to making an appointment with your dentist, from getting frozen yogurt to getting enough sleep at night. The actual acts of self-care will differ from person to person because it is a personalized thing. It is what personally allows you to recuperate from daily anxieties and stress, and or what helps you to live an all-around better, healthful life. While everyone's methods will vary, through a combination of research and personal experience, I've realized that there are different guidelines that we can follow to ensure that self-care is more long-lasting and more efficient. The first is that it should be deliberate. Self-care acts should be planned. If not, they should just be done with the intention of elevating your mood. There are absolutely times when we engage in an activity and it takes us by surprise and allows us to feel really good, which is super great. But that's not necessarily self-care because we didn't enter it with the intention of having it make us feel good. For example, you might spontaneously decide to go out to a movie night with some friends and have a really amazing time. You're so happy that you went out and you're feeling really good, but those good feelings don't necessarily mean you're engaging in self-care. That being said, going out with your friends absolutely can be an act of self-care. You know, maybe you've had a really stressful week and you're planning on going out Friday night with a friend, or maybe you want to go by yourself just to enjoy 2 hours of the cinema, and that is self-care because you're going there to de-stress and feel better specifically. On a related note, self-care should not be routinely and consistently impulsive and spontaneous. You might have a rough morning and decide to skip class, call out of work, cancel your doctor's appointments. You can stay in bed all day, eat junk food, and watch Netflix. And while that actually might make you feel better from whatever was bothering you this morning, does neglecting all of your responsibilities really help you in creating a long-term source of well-being? Yes, there are obviously days where our responsibility to keeping up good mental health is more important than some of our other responsibilities. I am all for mental health days. I think they are awesome. I think everyone needs to engage in them and they need to be more normalized in our society because there are just some times where we need to focus on ourselves before we can focus on being productive members of society. So yes, take the day when life is just too overwhelming. I am fully in support of that. But I do also feel that mental health days should be planned when possible. That way you have the ability to recuperate from a variety of different stressors, and when you're in a better mood, most likely, that way you can actually build upon that better mood as opposed to only trying to desperately make yourself feel better from something that is so temporary that is just bothering you that day. I feel like a big source of spontaneous self-care, especially when it comes to millennials like myself, is shopping. Oh, so many of you feel attacked right now. Getting new clothing items or new home decor is always exciting. It's like swiping your card is an instant shot of endorphins, and it always makes us feel good to have nice new things. But I recognized in myself and a lot of my friends that we do become dependent on spending money to feel better. That plays into a whole nother discussion on consumerism in our world today. But if we make a habit of impulsively making new purchases every time we experience a rough moment, not only does that good feeling from spending become less effective, but we are left with nothing more than holes in our wallets and a bunch of stuff we don't need and will probably tire of very soon because we are only looking for an instant feel better. But let's be real. A lot of us spend money we really don't have to spend on luxury items because we can justify it saying it's for self-care. And when that larger than normal credit card bill comes in, we have additional stress that we didn't have before we self-cared. So in that situation, are we really making purchases that are going to benefit our well-being? The thing is that self-care shouldn't exclusively be used as band-aids. That is why the planned aspect is so important. It should not be something you engage in only when you need to pick me up. We need to find the balance between using self-care to alleviate current problems while also building up our strength on top of what we've already formed. I think this is expressed really well visually, so I have 3 cups. One is labeled well-being, which accounts for our physical, emotional, and mental health. I've also included a base level marker, which is where we should always try to keep our well-being and it shouldn't dip below for extended periods of time. The next is labeled self-care, which represents the benefits we get from engaging in self-care activities. And the last is labeled depleted energy, which accounts for almost anything that takes away from our well-being. And this is also something that's going to differ from person to person, whether it is work, school, mental illness, family responsibilities, etc. So naturally, when we function in our day-to-day lives, the things we spend our energy on take away from our different types of health, so the glass filled with our well-being drops lower. In order to recharge our well-being and get back to a stable level, we need to fill that glass with our acts of self-care. Now, no matter how large of a stressor it is, if we only refill our well-being glass when energy is taken out of it, our well-being will always stay at the same level. We won't be able to make significant improvements because we are only ever trying to make up for what is already lost. But if we hit our base level and still continue to self-care on top of that, our well-being will actually grow. And even when our energy does get depleted, the effects may not be as severe because we've already built up so much strength to contend against it. So self-care should not be exclusive to making yourself feel better in times of stress. It should also be present on good days where we don't have anything immediate to recover from. Self-care is not a quick fix to sadness or stress. It is a process that has to be developed and continually worked on over time. Even though our acts of self-care may change as we grow as people and we discover that there are things that make us feel good that we didn't previously know, it still should be part of our daily, weekly, monthly routine, the same as other responsibilities and the things that deplete our energy because we need to constantly fight against it. And the final thing I want to talk about in this video is challenging all of us to redefine what an act of self-care truly means to us. For some of us, we might have already determined what our acts of self-care are. We know why they're important, we engage on them on a regular basis on good and bad days. We have the self-care thing pretty down pat. I know for me, some of the things on the top of my list are reading, taking baths, watching YouTube, watching TV and movies, hanging out with friends, going to Barnes & Noble and just strolling the shelves, going to a coffee shop, taking a pole dancing class, hoop dancing by myself, just all of these things that I really enjoy doing and that always elevate my mood. I'm sure a lot of your lists probably look very similar, just with different specific actions. But how far down the list do we have to go to find things like taking care of your personal hygiene, going to a checkup with your physician, doing laundry, paying bills, doing taxes? I'm assuming those are pretty far down. I think there's this general consensus that self-care consists of things that are fun and extra things we do to lighten up our mood, but things that are perceived to be responsibilities, parts of adulthood, and things that just have this like general negative connotation are always things that we need to actually self-care from. And I hate that I have to say this because it does sort of negate my next point, but that's not a lie. Those things really are a drag. They are often things that we need to recover from. I am not saying that we should always run into doing our taxes with big smiles on our faces because it's self-care. No. But when we have things that we have to do, isn't that technically taking care of ourselves? Whether it be just maintaining our physical health or making sure that we have a warm home to live in, those are all things that do contribute to our well-being, which is exactly what self-care aims to improve. In response to that, it's pretty easy to say, well, that means anything and everything could be considered self-care. And you'd be right. Literally anything could be self-care. But it comes down to that deliberate and planned nature of the activity and also making time to actually reap the benefits of it rather than just doing it because we have to. I mean, I have to clean my body. I can't go walking around all stinky and dirty 24/7. I gotta wash my hair, but that doesn't mean that I can't set aside some time on the weekend to take a really nice long hot shower with candles and listening to my favorite music. So there really is a difference between doing something you have to and making it an enjoyable experience you can benefit from. This concept of broadening my view of what self-care really is hit me like smacked me in the face with an epiphany during my last semester of college. I was on campus during a break waiting for my next class to start and I was really distressed. I don't even remember what it was. I could have been stressing about a grade, I could have been stressed about an assignment going on, or it could have been something unrelated to school. But all I know is I was really upset and I left campus crying and in tears with the intention of skipping my next class, going home and watching Netflix to make myself feel better. About 10 minutes after I had left campus and I was on my way home, I started to really question if this was the best decision for me. Like, sure, I was crying and I wanted to feel better and I knew how to make myself feel better, but I realized that in doing so, I would be marked absent for class, I would miss an entire class's worth of information, and I would be struggling to catch up the next week. Although going home was the easier option and it brought me the most immediate gratification, I realized that my normal ideas of self-care would actually be hurting me. So I drove around for a couple more minutes to calm down, I turned around, right back to campus, and went to my next class. It was not fun, but it was deliberate action I took with the intention of it catering to my well-being, which was doing better in school. So that day, going to class was actually my act of self-care. Since that day, I've really expanded what consists of self-care for me, and I think it has been so beneficial to my overall life. I think when we redefine what self-care means to us, we're really able to appreciate the benefits to our well-being that we might have overlooked because they were hidden beneath some not so enticing activities. But I think that being able to view things through that lens is an immense asset in building up our health and overall strength. And overall, I think that mindset just makes us more positive people. Like, it is so much more pleasant to go into an activity we would normally consider grueling if we first take a step back, reflect, and see where our potential benefits lie in actually doing that. It is just so much nicer to do things and actually see a reward at the end, as opposed to carrying around this big weight on our shoulders that we feel doesn't bring us anything, when it really does. So I really encourage you guys to take a look at yourself and your self-care routine and ask yourself some questions. Am I making plans to engage in self-care even when I'm not upset in that particular moment? Am I using self-care exclusively as a way to recover from stress, or am I also using it as a way to build up the foundation of positive well-being that I already have? What do my acts of self-care look like? Are they too consumer-based? Are they only contributing to one aspect of my well-being? What sort of everyday tasks have I overlooked, and how can I ensure that I am getting the most benefits from them by transforming it into an act of self-care? I feel so passionately about self-care. I am so focused on promoting good and healthy habits regarding self-care, but I am also super hell-bent on eliminating some of those more toxic ones that are constantly being thrown around with the words self-care. But I do think those of us who do already engage in self-care could use a frequent check-in just to make sure that our self-care is as well-rounded and efficient as it can be. I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. What does self-care mean to you? What are some of the activities you normally engage in self-care? And are there any changes you feel you can make in your personal self-care routine to make it more beneficial to you? But that really concludes this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!